So, first things first. Last week. Nancy Hughes, you need to write to me at oldsoupwith2ps@gmail.com. Your question from one of the previous videos was very deep. I understand now why you want me to do a unanimous declaration. But it would be too lengthy for me to just inject an explanation for you now. So please email me so that I can tell you what I think about your question. Okay, so that was the first thing, and then I also wanted to say hello to, there's somebody named Blue Geisha, going by the name Blue Geisha. I'm so glad you joined us. You know, I appreciate you tag, like, brought tears to my eyes. Thank you so much. And Victor Thomas, dude, I've been trying to say hi to you forever. Keep forgetting to. And there's more people like George. I mean, it's like I could go on and on and on and on. But that's all I can remember right now to get started. Okay, so we're going into General Stone Tiger, the Go Show. Okay, most of the Go Show is actually, most of the Go Show is actually on in the volume 4. Okay, the only first two paragraphs are missing, and so I'm just going to go ahead and read the first two paragraphs and the background, and then I'm going to switch to this. Okay, so I'm going to read the background first from page 953 of volume 1. Background: General Stone Tiger. This letter was written at Minobu in 1278 to Shijo Nakatsukasa Saburo Seiman, commonly called Shijo Kingo. Kingo was accomplished in both the practice of medicine and the martial arts. For nearly the entire first half of 1278, Nichiren Daishonin had suffered from debilitating and chronic diarrhea. Evidently, Kingo had sent the Daishonin various medicines that had helped alleviate his illness. In the fall of 1277, a virulent epidemic swept Japan, and Kingo's lord became violently ill. Despite the lord's deep-seated antagonism toward the Daishonin's teachings, he turned to Kingo for help. Lord Emma was most grateful for Kingo's ministrations and rewarded him with an estate 3 times larger than the one he already had. Yet the Daishonin warns Kingo to be constantly on guard and to take particularly great care to protect himself from attack while traveling. Okay, so then to the top of page 952, I'm going to read the first 2 paragraphs, and then we'll go we'll be reading from the book from there on. It says, General Stone Tiger on page 952 from volume 1. It says, on the 22nd of this month, I received all that you sent me from Shinano: 3,000 coins, a sack of polished rice, 50 slabs of rice cake, 1 large and 1 small bamboo container of sake, 5 strings of dried persimmons, and 10 pomegranates, as well as the list of items you enclosed with these offerings. A sovereign is supported by the people, and they in turn live under his protection. Clothes protect us from a change of temperature, and food sustains us, just as oil keeps a fire burning and water enables fish to live. Birds nest high in the trees and fear the human beings will do harm to them, but they come down to feed and are caught in snares. Fish dwelling in the depths of the water fear that it is too shallow and dig holes to hide in, yet lured by bait, they take the hook. No treasure possessed by human beings is more precious than food and drink, clothing, and medicine. So he just said, you know, the things that you just sent me are the most precious things that I could have been sent. And thank you from the bottom of my heart for taking such good care of me. I'm kind of getting old. Continuing then, from page 65 in volume 4. He says, I am not as healthy, continuing, this is the exact continuation of the Go Show. He says, I am not as healthy as others. I guess I could say that myself, huh? I am not as healthy as others, and in addition, I dwell in this remote mountain forest. God, sounds just like me. This year was especially difficult. with widespread epidemics and famine in spring and summer, which worsened in autumn and winter. My sickness grew worse again, too, but you gave me various medicines and a quilted robe. Thanks to your remedies, I improved steadily. I have now recovered and feel much better than before. The treatise on the stages of yoga practice by the Bodhisattva Maitreya and the treatises on the great perfection of wisdom by Bodhisattva Nagarjuna both state that if one's illness is caused by fixed karma, even excellent medicine will turn to poison, but that if one believes in the Lotus Sutra, poison will change into medicine. Although unworthy, I propagate the Lotus Sutra. Hence, heavenly devils have competed to deprive me of food. Understanding this, I have no complaint. But I believe that I survived this time only because Shakyamuni Buddha took possession of your body to help me. So much for that. I was extremely concerned about your journey home last time, and I am overjoyed to hear that you have arrived safely in Kamakura. Such was my anxiety that I asked everyone who came here from Kamakura about you. One said that he had met you at Yumoto. Another said that he encountered you further on at Kozu. And when a third told me that he had seen you in Kamakura, I felt greatly relieved. From now on, you must not come to visit me in person unless absolutely necessary. When you have something urgent to tell me, send a messenger. Indeed, I was deeply worried about your last trip. An enemy will try to make you forget the danger so that he can attack. If you should have to travel, do not begrudge the cost of a horse. Make sure that you ride a good horse. Bring along your best men to defend you against a surprise attack, and ride a horse that can easily carry you in your armor. In the 8th volume of Great Concentration and Insight, which would be Tiantai, and in the 8th volume of the Annotations of the Great Concentration and Insight, which would be Miolo, it says, the stronger one's faith, the greater the protection of the gods. This means that the protection of the gods depends on the strength of one's faith. The Lotus Sutra is a fine sword, but its might depends on the one who wields it. Among those who propagate the sutra in the latter day of the law, who compares with Shariputra, Mahakashayapa, perceiver of the world's sounds, wonderful sound, Manjushri, and Medicine King? Persons of the two vehicles, such as Shariputra, had destroyed all the illusions of thought and desire, thus freeing themselves from the 6 paths. Bodhisattvas, such as perceiver of the world's sounds, had eradicated 41 of the 42 levels of ignorance and were like the moon on the 14th night before it reaches fullness. Nevertheless, Shakyamuni Buddha refused to entrust the mission of propagation to any of these people and gave it instead to the bodhisattvas of the earth. Thus, these bodhisattvas are the ones that had thoroughly forged their resolve. The mighty warrior General Li Kuang, whose mother had been devoured by a tiger, shot an arrow at the stone he believed was the tiger. The arrow penetrated the stone all the way up to its feathers, but once he realized it was only a stone, he was unable to pierce it again. Later he came to be known as General Stone Tiger. This story applies to you, Shijo Kingo. Though enemies lurk in wait for you, your resolute faith in the Lotus Sutra has forestalled great dangers before they could begin. Realizing this, you must strengthen your faith more than ever. It is impossible to say all that I want to in one letter. With my deep respect, Nichiren. So I'll just go into the Gosho lecture, starting on page 67, first column. In June and July of 1957, I was engaged in fierce struggles in both Hokkaido and Kansai. I had rushed to Hokkaido to combat the Yubari Coal Miners Union's blatant abuse of the right to religious freedom of union members who belonged to the Soka Gakkai. At the time, the union was regarded as all-powerful, and no one dared stand up to it. In Yubari, I took the lead in the struggle to protect our members and to see that justice was done. Immediately after my efforts in Yubari on July 3rd, I traveled to Osaka to present myself for questioning at the Osaka Prefectural Police Headquarters in connection with alleged election law violations in an Osaka district by-election in April that year. I was arrested and jailed later that day on false charges. These two incidences, one following so quickly after the other, were both defensive struggles against the insidious nature of power and authority. Back in spring, when these two struggles were set in motion, I had engraved in my heart and written down in my diary Nichiren's lesson about being able to lodge an arrow deep into a rock, referring to the famous ancient Chinese legend about General Stone Tiger that appears in this letter. It was an expression of my determination to exert myself based on faith in the mystic law, the power source for absolute victory and for making the possible impossible. In addition, it was a reflection of my readiness to face every hardship with the dauntless spirit I had forged in the core of my being. On July 3rd, on my way from Hokkaido to Osaka, I had a brief stopover at Tokyo's Haneda Airport. Mr. Toda met me there and presented me with a copy of his just-published novel, The Human Revolution, which had previously been serialized in the Seikyo Shimbun under his pen name Myo Goku. How mystic this was. At the crucial moment when I was about to embark on a bitter struggle with the devilish nature of authority, I held in my hand The Human Revolution, which recorded my mentor's experience of awakening to his mission as a bodhisattva of the earth while in prison for his beliefs during World War II. Okay, I'm going to stop there and go back a little bit. Okay, so he's talking about the Yubari coal miners thing. Everybody knows what that refers to? Okay, there was a coal miners union evidently in the area of Japan known as Yubari. I think this is Yubari Prefecture, the city of Yubari, I don't know. At any rate, the coal miners union, everybody knows what a union is, right? Where everybody collectively gets together. They were basically at a point where they were all powerful, and they essentially stated, for whatever reason that's not clear so far in this Gosho lecture, why he was in Yubari, why they were pissed off. At any rate, they were trying to keep Soka Gakkai members from being able to work there. In other words, it was sort of like a religious test. You couldn't be something strange like chanting Nomyo. They were probably all Nembutsu or something, whatever. But he was down there, and rather than putting up with that shit, what did they do? They went down there and said, we aren't putting up with this shit. Okay, and they took on the authorities. And he ended up in jail. Okay? So do understand that. And what he's trying to explain here, as we're going through this, to explain that reality. This is something that he was only 21 years old when this all went down. Listen, listen how he after these two incidents, he says on page 68, first column, one following so quickly after the other were both defensive struggles. Okay, I was protecting members, okay, against the insidious nature of power and authority. Okay, so President Ikeda is qualifying there that power and authority are always a recipe for potential abuse and an opposite outcome to that which they are supposedly representing. Okay? Because quite often power leads to a desire to sustain and maintain power. And authority puts one in a sense of being better than others. You're in judgment. So again, both of these are perfect circumstances for devilish functions to affect the weakness in your own nature, right? So he's not saying this is all about bad people. This is about the truth that exists about power and authority that exists today everywhere. All right? Back in spring when these two struggles were set in motion, I had engraved in my heart and written down in my diary Nichiren's lesson about being able to lodge an arrow deep into a rock, referring to the famous ancient Chinese legend about General Stone Tiger that appears in this letter. It was an expression of my determination to exert myself based on faith in the mystic law as a disciple of Josei Toda, by the way, at this point in time, by this point in time. So from 19 to 21, he's already really forged. When he talks about forged, again, we're using English language words here. What does forged mean again? Nope. Forged actually is what happens when a blacksmith puts iron and they pound the shit out of it and then they put it in the fire again. That's forging, okay? That's obviously by stressing the metal and stressing the metal, it becomes actually stronger.
Yes.
And that the point of this in relationship to our lives is that as we go through the steps of human revolution, our faith deepens and our wisdom grows. Okay? So, again, though, he's saying that he had already taken on this aspect just 2 years into his faith under the direct guidance of President Toda as his mentor. He was actually working with and for President Toda. Okay? Going on page 68, second column. Having absolute conviction in faith. This is really important. Okay? In the great struggle to propagate the mystic law, it is the bodhisattvas of the earth who possess the thoroughly forged resolve never to be defeated, no matter how harsh the storms of adversity that beset them, to win over fear and trepidation and keep pressing forward through all. Human revolution is found in this strong, positive pulsing of life. Okay? I want to go back, though, and say that again. In the great struggle to propagate the mystic law, it is the bodhisattvas of the earth who possess the thoroughly forged resolve never to be defeated. So what is that saying? No matter how harsh the storms of adversity that beset them. What is that qualification?
But then Buddhahood is hard.
Well, we already know attaining Buddhahood is difficult.
You're going to face difficulties.
And we've already, and yes, he's going to talk about that more at length as we go on. But what he's really talking about too is the fact that the bodhisattvas of the earth are the ones that have this faith. This is the spirit to never give up, no matter what. This is the no matter what spirit of the Soka Gakkai.
Yes.
Okay? This was not taught. It was taught by Nichiren, but it wasn't alive in the teachings of any of the sects of Nichiren Buddhism at the time that this was all happening. Okay? So again, this manner of practice, this manner of approach to perceive the Lotus Sutra in the fashion that Nichiren had specifically prescribed in his Gosho, in his theses, is what President Makaguchi and then President Toda predicated their independent practice as whatever that first organization was. You understand that, right? They were supportive of the Nichiren Shoshu Head Temple at Taisekeji, okay? But they were actually out doing Shakabuku and creating an independent lay organization that had not previously existed. Okay? All right, so he's saying, to win over fear and trepidation and keep pressing forward through all, human revolution is found in this strong positive pulsing of life. And so that's what I wanted to clarify again. When we talk about this Buddha nature and this Buddhahood and this don't be afraid and this fearlessness, it does not mean not feeling any fear. Okay? I just want to qualify that. It means not giving up. Okay? You are going to fear what you don't know until it happens.
Yes.
And when the devilish function has been defeated, of course you feel strong and you bask in the victory. But while you're going through it, it's okay to have fear and trepidation, but you must win over them. To have fear and trepidation doesn't say you don't have any faith. It says you're a human being. You know, difficult stuff is scary. Difficult stuff is not something that you just naturally go, yeah, I'm so happy. Bad stuff's happening. Difficult things I'm being encountered. You know, that happens when you go to chant Daimoku. That's when that correct thinking comes out. But the first thinking that's going to come out of you is 9 world thinking. The 10th world thinking is, I better go chant. Okay? Do you understand my point? So President Keita talks all the time like he's fearless. He's never experienced fear, one might assume. No, I don't believe that to be true. Okay? That is not the case. It's the manner in which you face the fear.
Yes. Yes.
Okay? Are you going to kick his ass? Okay, now, until you win the fight, of course you're wondering, am I going to win the fight? Okay? But if your determination on the front end is, I'm going to kick its ass, and I'm not going to stop fighting until I kick its ass, then it doesn't matter how beat up you get. You don't ever stop. You don't ever give in. And I guarantee you, you will always win if you follow that prescription. Because that is the expression of faith that unlocks the power in your life that is Buddha. That allows you to do some pretty spooky shit, frankly, that you wouldn't normally be motivated to even try. The audacity of this teaching is part of its strength. Do understand that. Do you know what I mean by its audacity? The Daishonin is not shy about stating the truth as he sees it, as he believes it, and neither is Daisaku Ikeda. And neither should you be. Okay? Now, a lot of people would say that's audacious. Who said you have the right to talk like that? The Sutra does. I'm a bodhisattva of the earth. I'm on the foremost teachers in the latter day of the law. There are no greater teachers than the bodhisattva of the earth. Okay? So, continuing then. Mr. Toda, I wanted to preface all that to put into context what's coming now. All right? Mr. Toda taught us that human revolution means to be aware of our fundamental purpose in life and having absolute conviction in faith. What did that just say? He taught us that human revolution means to be aware of our fundamental purpose in life. What is our fundamental purpose in life? To accomplish Kosen Rufu as bodhisattvas of the earth and original disciples of the original teacher who manifest his Nichiren in the latter day of the law. Okay? That's our fundamental purpose in life, frankly. Okay? We might do a lot of other things, but we're bodhisattvas of the earth. Our fundamental purpose is to come and convert others and to help save them from their suffering by showing them how to fix it themselves. Okay? And having absolute conviction in faith. Why is absolute conviction in faith so key to this human revolution? Who said all the stuff I just said first? Nichiren Daishonin. Okay? So the conviction in faith is that you're believing in Nichiren's teaching without any reservation or without any concern. And when I say reservation, I'm saying reservation as do not begrudge your life. As the Atsuhara, those were just poor farmers. They were ready to die rather than give up the Lotus Sutra, renounce their faith. Okay, so Mr. Toda taught us that human revolution, it's not a fancy word, and we use it all the time for meaning that you've attained Buddhahood. We're already all Buddhists. Okay, so let's understand what it really means. What it really means is that that we have come to grasp our fundamental purpose in life, which means that we understand we're bodhisattvas of the earth with a mission for Kosen Rufu, and that we have absolute conviction in faith, which means that we believe the teaching that says what I just said is so. He also explained that it means transforming our life from a condition dominated by the three poisons of greed, anger, and foolishness to one manifesting the worlds of bodhisattva and Buddhahood. This is the process of overcoming all devilish functions and awakening and summoning forth the noble potential inherent in our life. It is building a strong self. That is why we who are engaged in the challenge of human revolution every day can draw forth from within us the power to break through any deadlock, even in the face of daunting obstacles that appear impossible to surmount. We have no need to cower, panic, fear, or run away, for we can tap the power of supreme courage and wisdom that resides within. What did that just say? This is the process of overcoming all devilish functions and awakening and summoning forth the noble potential inherent in our life. What's he talking about when he says that then? What would that be describing? He says, this is the process of bringing forth our Buddha nature. That's what that just said. This is the process of overcoming all devilish functions and awakening and summoning forth the noble potential inherent in our life. That's bringing forth our Buddha nature, right? He said it is building a strong self. That is why we who are engaged in the challenge of human revolution every day, and do notice how he qualifies all this bigger than shit. He doesn't say all of us. He doesn't say Soka Gakkai members. He doesn't say believers. He's talking about practitioners now, as President Makaguchi had qualified a couple of lectures ago. He says, that is why we, and when he says we, he's not talking about we as Soka Gakkai members. He's talking about we who practice according to be the same mind as Nichiren. Okay? That is why we who are engaged in the challenge of human revolution every day. What is that saying? That is why we who are engaged in the challenge of bringing forth our Buddha nature every day, which means we have a daily practice to the Gohonzon. Okay? We don't go weeks or days in between chanting Daimoku. Okay? We have actually a sense of mission, and that's why we practice. When you practice with a sense of mission, missing Gongyo is sort of like, ooh, you just don't do it. I mean, it's different when you're doing it with a sense of mission. When you see yourself as or are you just trying to not get in trouble? Are you doing Gongyo so that you don't get bachi? Okay, so do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. Okay, so he's saying, that is why we who are engaged in the challenge of human revolution every day, like those of us who are bringing forth our Buddha nature every day, can draw forth from within us, but based on our daily consistent relationship with the Gohonzon, as is described in that sentence, we can draw forth from within us the power to break through any deadlock, even if facing the daunting obstacles that appear impossible to surmount. We have no need to cower. Okay, so what would cower be? Cower would be to be put into a sense of fear that's like you're immobilized. Panic, again, you're not in fear or run away. You need to just, for we can tap the power of supreme courage and wisdom that resides within. How do we do that, though? It's by not cowering, not panicking, not fearing, not running away, getting in front of the Gohonzon and chanting Daimoku until that feeling is the wisdom from our life comes forth. Everybody's with me? Okay, so continuing at the bottom of page 68 on the second column. In this chapter, let us study General Stone Tiger to learn more about the essence of faith for achieving human revolution, for attaining Buddhahood in your present form. Top of page 69, first column. A disciple supporting his mentor amid personal adversity. General Stone Tiger was written. What's he talking about there? Who's he talking about there? He's actually talking about Nichiren Daishonin and Shijo Kingo. Okay? But he also had the same kind of relationship with his mentor, didn't he? With President Toda. Okay? Who was also going through adversity. Okay? And what he's trying to help us understand is that just because our mentor faces adversity doesn't mean that they lack the qualifications of being mentors. Or that they lack correctness in what they're saying or doing. Do you understand? All right, so a disciple supporting his mentor amid personal adversity. General Stone Tiger was written on October 22nd, 1278, while Nichiren was living on Mount Minobu and sent to Shijo Kingo in Kamakura. There are 2 points concerning its background that I would like to go over. First, so he's going to talk about not only Nichiren, but also Shijo Kingo. All right? First, from the previous year, 1277, there had been widespread epidemics and a prolonged drought that had resulted in drastic food shortages. In addition, Nichiren himself had been suffering from ill health since the end of that year. In other words, his life on Mount Minobu was quite hard in terms of both his health and material sustenance, food and shelter. Second, there had been a dramatic change in Shijo Kingo's circumstance. Everybody knows what that was? He had helped Lord Emma become well, and instead of being on the shit list, he had gotten 3 times the estates.
Yeah.
Second, there had been a dramatic change in Shijo Kingo's circumstances. In 1277, Shijo Kingo had become ensnared in a plot by Ryokan of Kurakuji temple in Kamakura and others on the occasion of the Kuwagabayatsu debate. This involved some of his fellow samurai making false accusations against him to his lord Emma in an attempt to discredit him. Lord Emma, believing these claims, was angered, and Kingo found himself threatened with the direst fate for a samurai, the loss of his status as a retainer. But following Nichiren's advice, Shijo Kingo continued to faithfully serve Lord Emma, with the result that Lord Emma not only recognized his sincerity, but even presented him with 3 new estates. At the same time, however, this demonstration of Lord Emma's favor fueled the jealousy of Shijo Kingo's rivals, placing him in even greater danger than before. You're all with me, right?
Yes.
It was against this background that Shijo Kingo sent a letter and offerings from Kamakura to Nichiren on Mount Minobu. General Stone Tiger is a reply to Shijo Kingo's sincere letter. In the opening passage of General Stone Tiger, prior to the section we will study this time, which we already read just a minute ago, Nichiren mentions some of the offerings Shijo Kingo had sent from his estate in Shinano province. 3,000 coins, polished rice cakes, sake, dried persimmons, pomegranates, and so forth. Kingo's offerings were not limited to these. It seems that he had delivered medicine and quilted robes, plural. Noting that clothes protect one from the cold and that food sustains one's life, he writes, "No treasure possessed by human beings is more precious than food and drink, clothing and medicine." This expresses Nichiren's gratitude to Shijo Kingo for having sent him offerings of these very items. In other words, again, Daishonin is going through adversity, Shijo Kingo's supporting him. Nichiren always conveyed his deepest appreciation to his followers for their support, treated them with the highest respect, and strove side by side with them in the struggle for Kosarufu. That was his spirit. We can see here from that that responding to sincerity with sincerity is the heart of the humanistic teaching of Nichiren Buddhism. What did he just say there? What kind of little lesson was left in that paragraph there? Leadership position doesn't mean shit. People respect one another as human beings. Okay? Calmly overcoming the 3 obstacles and the 4 devils. Okay, going back to the Gosho, I'm going to reread it and go into the rest of the lecture. Top of page 70. I am not as healthy as others, and in addition I dwell in this remote mountain forest of Minobu. This year was especially difficult, with widespread epidemics and famine in spring and summer, which worsened in autumn and winter. My sickness grew worse again, too, but you, Shijo Kingo, gave me various medicines and a quilted robe. Thanks to your remedies, I improved steadily. I have now recovered and feel much better than before. The treatise on the stages of yoga practice by Bodhisattva Maitreya and the treatise on the great perfection of wisdom by Bodhisattva Nagarjuna both state that if one's illness is caused by fixed karma, even excellent medicine will turn to poison, but that if one believes in the Lotus Sutra, the mystic law, poison will change into medicine. Although unworthy, I propagate the Lotus Sutra, hence heavenly devils have competed to deprive me of food. Understanding this, I have no complaint, but I believe that I survived this time only because Shakyamuni Buddha took possession of your body to help me. Bottom page 70, first column. In this section, President Ikeda continues, Nichiren Daishonin further stresses his deep gratitude to his disciple for helping him, saying that the workings of the Buddha had surely been activated in Shijo Kingo's life to enable him to do so. The context for this remark is that Kosen Rufu is a constant, unremitting struggle between the forces of the Buddha and the devilish functions. Okay. In this section, reading it again. In this section, Nichiren Daishonin further stresses his deep gratitude to his disciple for helping him, saying that the workings of the Buddha had surely been activated in Shijo Kingo's life to enable him to do so. The context of this remark is that Kosen Rufu is a constant, unremitting struggle between the forces of the Buddha and the devilish functions. The key here is, what did he just say in that last sentence? The context for this remark is that Kosen Rufu is a constant. So what does constant mean? It means it never stops.
Always.
Yes, unremitting. Won't give in. Again, it's constant struggle between the forces of the Buddha and devilish functions. So they don't ever stop. In Nichiren's struggle for Kosen Rufu, which saw him living in harsh conditions during his 2.5-year exile in Sado Island and then his residence at Mount Minobu, his health was no doubt seriously compromised. This manifested itself from the end of 1277 as illness accompanied by debilitating and chronic diarrhea. It grew worse with the approach of summer in the first half of June 1278, but the medicine Shijo Kingo, who was also a skilled physician, sent at that time helped relieve his suffering. His health had improved to the degree that he could write to Shijo Kingo. Pardon me. My complaint has diminished steadily and is now a mere 1/100th fraction of its former intensity. Several months later, just before Nichiren wrote, so all the stuff came, and it took him a while to feel well enough to actually reply. Several months later, just before Nichiren wrote General Stone Tiger, Shijo Kingo had visited him on Mount Minobu. While probably reporting on the increase in his estates, Shijo Kingo was also no doubt concerned about his mentor's physical condition as winter approached. Nichiren thanks Shijo Kingo for his judicious care in treating his illness, writing, "I have now recovered and feel much better than before." While struggling with illness as an ordinary person, like we do, Nichiren continues to give his all to encouraging his disciples. Through his personal example of recovering from illness, he demonstrates the great beneficial power of faith in the mystic law, which can change poison into medicine, and thus even prolong one's lifespan, which was regarded as fixed karma. Nichiren also states that his illness is a struggle against heavenly devils. Because he has engaged in the great struggle to propagate the mystic law, he asserts, such negative forces are vying to deprive him of his sustenance and rob him of his life. The fact that 3 obstacles and 4 devils had arisen to assail him because of his efforts for Kosen Rufu was just as the sutra taught. And likewise, just as the sutra taught, because his resolve to propagate the mystic law remained firm, he was assured of being protected by the Buddhas and heavenly deities, the benevolent forces of the universe. Understanding this, I have no complaint, he writes, teaching us his dauntless spirit in the face of such obstacles. Understanding this, I have no complaint. We should all really strive to have that wisdom. Understanding this, knowing what I'm endeavoring to accomplish with my life, I'm already prepared for what's involved in order for that to occur. And so therefore, when the shit hits the fan and it sucks, I really have no complaint. I signed up for this. Okay? All right, so continuing on page 71, the battle between devilish forces and the forces of the Buddha. Devilish forces. Forces of the Buddha. Sounds good. In a later writing, The Proof of the Lotus Sutra, Nichiren Daishonin offers his youthful disciple Nanja Tokimitsu guidance on fighting illness caused by devilish functions. Since you now appear certain to attain Buddhahood, perhaps the heavenly devil and evil spirits are using illness to try to intimidate you. Life in this world is limited. Never be even the least bit afraid. Okay? And again, when he's encouraging you, don't be afraid. Be afraid. Don't be defeated. But if you feel fear, it doesn't mean that you don't have faith. It means you're a human being. It means go chant thy moker. Okay? Do understand that. It's not a prerequisite that you're such a badass that nothing's, you're not affected by anything. That's not what we're talking about. It's not necessary. Do you understand? Again, because this was the point, I don't know if we're going to get here where it is. But again, Nichiren, he goes, such was my anxiety that I asked everyone who came here from Kamakura about you. Such was my anxiety, the Daishonin says. So did the Daishonin feel anxiety? He just admitted that he did. Did he fear for Shijo Kingo's safety? Yes! He didn't sit there and say, I'm the Buddha, I'll chant, Shijo Kingo will be well. No, that's not reality. No. Okay? And that's the only reason I keep bringing this up, is don't consider yourself as less if you feel the things that are part of being a human being. It's embracing the Gohonzon that brings forth your Buddha nature, the 10th world. Okay? So, here. In a later writing, The Proof of the Lotus Sutra, Nichiren Daishonin offers his youthful disciple Nanjo Tokimitsu guidance on fighting illness caused by devilish functions. Since you now appear certain to attain Buddhahood, perhaps the heavenly devil and evil spirits are using illness to try to intimidate you. Life in this world is limited. Never be even the least bit afraid. Never be even the least bit afraid, he writes, urging his disciple at the second column on page 671, urging his disciples not to be defeated by this obstacle. Okay, now how could you be defeated by the obstacle? Just by having fear? No. By having that fear affect your action. Do you understand? Okay. That's how they win devilish functions. Yes. They defeat you. They push you down. They make your higher life conditions disappear. You forget that they're real and that they're there. You forget how to access them. Are you all with me?
Yes.
All right. Never be even the least bit afraid, he writes, urging his disciple not to be defeated by this obstacle. He tells Tokimitsu that his illness is caused by devilish functions, seeking to prevent him from attaining enlightenment through his vigorous efforts for Kosen-Rufu. Further, Nichiren fiercely rebukes these negative functions assaulting Tokimitsu. And you demons! By making this man suffer, are you trying to swallow a sword point first, or embrace a raging fire, or become the arch enemy of the Buddhas of the 10 directions and the 3 existences? Badass. No one can avoid the sufferings of birth, aging, sickness, and death. Even when we practice the Daishonin's teachings, we will still fall ill. And we will ultimately die one day. But through our Buddhist practice, we can come to regard illness as an inherent part of life and face it with that from that higher standpoint. Nichiren set an example for his followers through his own unperturbed conduct and his victory over the 3 obstacles and 4 devils. Mr. Toda also declared, with the power of faith in the Gohonzon, I conquered the devils of illness and death that I was compelled to do battle with. He embodied the life state of a fearless lion king, exemplified by the words, what sickness can therefore be an obstacle? Kosen-Rufu is a battle between the forces of the Buddha and the devilish functions that pervade the universe. Like Mark Rogow. Faith in the mystic law enables us to vanquish the devils, like Mark, of illness and death. That is why Nichiren describes the medical care given to him by Shijo Kingo, whose actions serve to protect the votary of the Lotus Sutra, as the workings of Shakyamuni Buddha, and clarifies the principle for triumphing over all obstacles and negative functions without fail, which is based on faith, right? Concern for Shijo Kingo's return to Kamakura. So we already can see Shijo Kingo is concerned for the Daishonin. Now the Daishonin is also concerned for Shijo Kingo. This is not a hierarchical relationship. This is a horizontal relationship. Concern for Shijo Kingo's return to Kamakura. So much for that. I was extremely concerned about your journey home last time, and I am overjoyed to hear that you have arrived safely in Kamakura. Such was my anxiety that I asked everyone who came here from Kamakura about you. One said that he had met you at Yumoto. Another said he had encountered you further on at Kozu. And when a third told me that he had seen you in Kamakura, I felt greatly relieved. So he's saying, the Daishonin is saying, I felt apprehension. I didn't feel 100% confident. I wasn't sure you were okay until I heard you were okay. All right? I felt greatly relieved. He was a human being just like us. All right? From now on, you must not come to visit me in person unless absolutely necessary. When you have something urgent to tell me, send a messenger. Indeed, I was deeply worried about your last trip. An enemy will try to make you forget the danger so that he can attack. If you should have to travel, do not begrudge the cost of a horse. Make sure you ride a good horse. Bring along your best men to defend you against a surprise attack, and ride a horse that can carry you easily in your armor. Here Nichiren expresses his deep concern for Shijo Kingo's safe return to Kamakura, second column, page 72. At the time, the journey from Minobu to Kamakura was 2 or 3 days by horse. Nichiren seems to have been desperately worried about Shijo Kingo's safety for several days. Whenever someone arrived at Minobu from the direction of Kamakura, he inquired whether they had met Shijo Kingo en route. People said they had sighted him in Yumoto and Kozu, and eventually back in Kamakura. Hearing this, he was finally reassured of Kingo's safety and could breathe easily. What a wonderful, caring mentor Nichiren was. Just as Daisaku Ikeda appears to me to be, just as I know President Toda was, as I know Mr. Makaguchi must have been, okay? This is from the higher life condition that happens in being a mentor. What a wonderful, caring mentor Nichiren Daishonin was. But his consideration did not stop there. He goes on to instruct Shijo Kingo not to make the perilous journey to Minobu again unless it is absolutely necessary, adding that should he have something urgent to convey to him, he should send a messenger. Why was he so worried? In traveling to Kamakura from Minobu, one first followed the trail running along the Fuji River, and then traveled east. Just think, this is like 700-800 years ago, Japan. Okay, so this is like ancient times, man. There's trails and shit. There's no highways or anything. Okay, and they usually follow rivers or some other major thing that helps you get through the adversity of the journey. In traveling to Kamakura from Minobu, one first followed the trail running alongside the Fuji River and then traveled east through Suruga Province, crossing the mountains of Hakone. Suruga Province was home to many fiefs under the direct control of members of the ruling Hojo clan, the majority of whom, as adherents of the established Buddhist schools, were hostile towards Nichiren's followers. There were also many other dangers in journeying through the mountainous terrain. He couldn't help being concerned for his disciples' safety. Also, though Lord Emma's attitude had changed dramatically for the better, Shijo Kingo still had to remain constantly vigilant against the envious and resentful samurai who had slandered him to his lord and would take any opportunity to do away with him. It's especially important to be careful on one's return journey. Having completed some objective, we're likely to be more relaxed, making it easier to be caught off guard. We're also likely to be more tired than we realized. For Shijo Kingo, even though he was a skilled swordsman, a sudden attack by an enemy at such a moment could well prove fatal. But do understand, what did he just say there? What was just expressed in that last paragraph I just read? See if you can see it as clearly as I do. Nobody gets it? Okay.
I think maybe because Shinjo Kingo is the person who.
I'm talking about now this last paragraph. He says
Yeah.
it's a special. This is President Ikeda's guidance to us, okay,
Yeah,
as members.
So, which means don't think that if you have faith, then you don't need to
Exactly.
avoid
exactly.
anything.
In fact, he's very definitely saying you need to be careful. You need to be on your guard. He's
Yeah.
saying you're probably going to be more tired than you realize. Okay, he's saying use your common sense and use your wisdom, and the influence of the protective influence of the universe will follow suit. But what is he also expressing in saying that? I mean, this is General Stone Tiger. What's he stick this paragraph in here for? He's talking about Nichiren Daishonen's concern for Shijo Kingo after Shijo Kingo's already shown his concern for his master. And what is Daisaku Ikeda just doing in that paragraph? He's showing his concern for you in exactly the same fashion. Read what he just wrote. At first I was going like, why the hell did you stick this in here? And then, because this sounds corny kind of almost, right? I mean, to me. But the point that he's making is that he's actually expressing to you valid input, and he's expressing who he is. Daisaku Ikeda is a legitimate mentor. He's concerned about you. He does care about you. It's especially important to be careful, because the paragraph before, we're talking about Shijo Kingo, and he escaped an ambush, which he'll describe later here. But what he sticks in here, it's especially important to be careful on one's return journey. Having completed some objective, we're likely to be more relaxed. He's giving you direct guidance. He's saying, don't relax just because you've achieved victory after a struggle. Don't go off all happy and half-minded. Be aware. That's when the devil of the sixth heaven can strike. Because everybody thinks they're invincible at that moment. All right? He's your mentor expressing the same concern that has already been shown by the mentor Nichiren. All mentors show this concern. Okay? So whenever we would hear this at the end of meetings, travel home safely, whenever you guys are leaving, I mean it from the bottom of my heart. Okay? This is always the mindset of the person that's trying to be the teacher, because it's because of you that they are able to do that. And also, you're putting yourself in whatever position you're putting yourself in because you're giving this teacher the opportunity to be the teacher. And so it's a mutuality. That's why I say it's not a hierarchical thing. It's equal. There's a concern. It's going both directions. Okay? A true mentor cannot be someone that has no concern for others, that just feels he's the mentor and therefore everyone's obligated to kiss his ass. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay? Real mentors always care sincerely for the people that they're trying to help. Vigilance is the key to victory.
Yes.
Continuing on page 73. First column. Nichiren notes an enemy will try to make you forget the danger so that he can attack. As Nichiren's disciples, we should all take these words deeply to heart. To cross a raging torrent and achieve one's aims, one must pay close attention and exercise the utmost caution. At the end of our meetings, we urge members to be on guard against traffic accidents and remind them that the meeting doesn't really end until all get home safe and sound. Remember that? Okay, by making a conscious effort to be careful, we can avoid falling victim to devilish functions. We can defeat them by having that foresight. They're defeated before they can get started, is how he referred it here somehow. Nichiren even gave Shijo Kingo advice about the kind of horse he should ride. In today's terms, this would be advice about method of transportation, car, motorcycle, bicycle, and so forth. When we're out doing SGI activities, traveling from one place to another, even if on foot, we need to stay alert. As SGI members, you all have a noble mission for Kosen Rufu. Please don't cut corners as far as safety is concerned, but always remain alert to the slightest forewarning of danger or mishap. Bring every activity to a safe and successful completion. But if someone should meet with an accident, then please warmly encourage them. No matter what trials we may encounter, by summoning forth faith in the mystic law, we can lessen our karmic retribution and change poison into medicine. Of course, having no accidents is best. My wife and I are always chanting earnestly for the safety and well-being of all of our members. Each of you is a precious follower of the Buddha, so remind one another to be careful and vow to keep devilish influences out of your way by being vigilant. As Nichiren writes, strengthen faith day by day and month after month. Should you slacken in your resolve even a bit, devils will take advantage. I pray that all of you, without exception, will exert yourselves diligently in your Buddhist practice in accord with this eternal guideline, thereby vanquishing negative functions and leading lives of great victory. Continuing on page 74. I'm going to go ahead and finish, bro. The importance of strong faith. In the 8th volume of the great teacher Tintai's Great Concentration and Insight, and in the 8th volume of the great teacher Myolo's Annotations on the Great Concentration and Insight, it says, stronger one's faith, the greater the protection of the gods. This means that the protection of the gods depends on the strength of one's faith. The Lotus Sutra is a fine sword, but its might depends on the one who wields it. The heavenly deities will definitely protect the practitioners of the Lotus Sutra who uphold and propagate the sutra in the latter day of the law. He just qualified something there. Did you catch that? The heavenly deities will definitely protect the practitioners of the Lotus Sutra who uphold, so that's an action, they're practitioners, and they're not just believers, right? Who uphold and propagate the sutra in the latter day of the law. Okay? So he's talking about practitioners. The Buddhas and Bodhisattvas will praise such individuals because they're functioning as Buddhas and Bodhisattvas at that point. And the gods of the sun and the moon will light their way before and behind. But it is the individual's faith that activates these protective functions, not your membership in the organization. Not the fact that there's a Gohonzon hanging in a Butsudan somewhere in your house. Do you understand?
Yeah.
It's your faith. The realization of our prayers depends on our wholehearted effort and earnest determination. What's the earnest determination and effort he's talking about, though? Yes, in our daily life with the struggles and the difficulties and the things that we're trying to accomplish and the challenges we're trying to create as benefit. But what's he really, really, really talking about at the deepest level? The realization of our prayers depends on our wholehearted effort and earnest determination. The realization of our prayers depends on us. It's not dependent on anything else. It's not dependent on anything else. The realization of our prayers depends on our wholehearted effort and earnest determination. It's the effort toward Kosen Rufu and the determination to accomplish it as a disciple of the original teacher. Okay? That's what he's talking about. This indeed is the lesson to be found in the great teacher Myolo's words, the stronger one's faith, the greater the protection of the gods. We're talking about Tatsunokuchi kind of shit here, okay? Strong faith, strong resolve is the key to victory. The power brought forth from the mighty sword of the Lotus Sutra hinges on the faith of the person who wields it. Nichiren consistently urged Shijo Kingo to behave and live as a person of wisdom. He cared deeply for Kingo's success, and he offered him detailed advice about areas to watch in his daily life, his attitude toward his Lord, and his manner of interacting with others around him. In one sense, our aim as practitioners of Nichiren Buddhism is to build and live lives in which nothing can defeat us. Faith in the mystic law enables us to establish a life state of absolute victory, victory of a deeper dimension than the relative victories and defeats we experience as our daily lives unfold. Do you understand the difference? The trials and tribulations of the 9 worlds are nothing compared to holding on to the 10th and revealing it, okay? By steadily exerting ourselves in our Buddhist practice and gradually cultivating inner strength day after day. So now what's he saying there? So this process is accomplished through an ongoing reality in your life of day after day relationship with the Gohonzon. This is not accomplished by one thought, one realization, one anything.
No.
Because it doesn't ever stop.
No.
It's never like, I got it, and now I got it.
No.
And I don't have to do shit anymore. No. You have much more to do now. Okay? So by steadily exerting ourselves in our Buddhist practice and gradually cultivating, he says even gradually, right? He's saying you don't have to kill yourself. Gradually, that means never giving up. Gradually cultivating inner strength day after day, we can develop the powerful conviction and faith. We can develop the powerful conviction and faith. So he's not even saying he expects us to have it in the advance of actual practice and actual proof. Do you follow? He says, we can develop the powerful conviction and faith that will allow us to wholeheartedly challenge any difficulty when the winds of karma blow or when the 3 obstacles and 4 devils assail us. Well, what's that really saying, though? We can, let me restate it according to me. Okay, by steadily exerting ourselves in our Buddhist practice and gradually cultivating inner strength day after day, we can develop the powerful conviction and faith through the benefits that we've seen through that process that are stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. Now we've gotten closer to stage 4, right? Okay, we can develop the powerful conviction and faith that will allow us. Okay, so now what was key about that? The powerful conviction and faith. That will allow us. You can't express this power in your life without that conviction of faith, because that's what unlocks and creates it. Do you understand the point that I'm trying to make? Okay, so he says, we can develop the powerful conviction in faith that will allow us to wholeheartedly challenge any difficulty when the winds of karma blow or when the 3 obstacles and 4 devils assail us. What is he talking about? We can go to the Gohonzon no matter what circumstance we're facing, no matter what difficulty has arisen, no matter how much we think we don't deserve it, or it's off the wall, or why is this happening to me now? All of that stuff. We can have the wisdom to immediately go to the Gohonzon with the conviction and understanding, I forgot, that's right. I'm supposed to sit down and kick this ass now. Okay? So that's what he's talking about. He's saying, only because you have that connection are you able to draw forth that power. That power doesn't come from being a member. It doesn't come from being a believer. It comes from being a practitioner. All right? The power brought forth... Where am I?
Page 74 and treasure of the heart. This paragraph.
Okay, this part. Okay, you're right. We can develop the powerful conviction and faith that will allow us to wholeheartedly challenge any difficulty when the winds of karma blow. The winds of karma blow as shit happens. Okay, or when the 3 obstacles and 4 devils assail us. Treasures of the heart are something that we can slowly accumulate over time. Our steady efforts each day to polish our lives and strengthen our faith and resolve are the means by which we can build an unshakable state of life in which we enjoy ourselves at ease. Okay? Then, because you can get to a point when you really don't worry. You're not afraid. Okay? Faith resides in our ongoing human revolution. What did that just say? It said that human revolution isn't a place. It's not a destination. It's not a final spot. Mm-hmm. He just said, right? Where am I reading it again? Here? Yeah. Faith resides in our ongoing human revolution. Hang on.
Yep.
Yeah, faith.
Yeah.
Okay. Faith resides in our ongoing human revolution. The purpose of our Buddhist practice is to realize our full potential as human beings. That's why Nichiren urged his beloved disciple Shijo Kingo to live out his life as a person of wisdom and a model for other followers. In addition, he instructed him to overcome the very real problems he encountered in his life through his Buddhist practice. Okay. In General Stone Tiger, the Daishonin offers Kingo numerous pieces of advice for his future safety and security and emphasizes that strengthening his faith and forging his resolve are of vital importance. As he writes, the protection of the heavenly deities depends on the strength of one's faith. It is the heart that is important. As Nichiren writes, on page 75, first column, it is the heart that is important. It is no exaggeration to say that victory or defeat in the life depends upon whether one's heart, one's resolve is strong and steadfast. Speaking of individuals with strong resolve, I have engaged in a dialogue with Aurelio Pesci, the co-founder and first president of the global think tank, the Club of Rome. Behind Dr. Pesci's warm smile was a man of indomitable conviction. Dr. Pesci was a hero of the Italian anti-fascist resistance. That was the anti-Mussolini forces back in the Hitler days, right? He was arrested by the fascist militia in February 1944 and spent almost a year behind bars. This was, of course, during World War II. At the same time that the Soka Gakkai's first and second presidents, Tadasaburo Makaguchi and Josei Toda, were imprisoned in Japan. Dr. Pesci was subjected to violent interrogation by his captors, but he did not break. Dr. Pesci said that his experience in prison had shown him both the weakness and the strength of human beings. He witnessed self-important, arrogant individuals who at the first sign of pressure were cowardly and caved in to the authorities. At the same time, others who may not have made such an impression in ordinary life revealed themselves under harsh persecution as true heroes who refused to betray their comrades. Dr. Pesci wrote, "It is perhaps from the experiences of that period that I began to be convinced that lying latent in man is a great force for good." His insight resonates closely with the teachings of Buddhism. We possess a great force for good within us that cannot be defeated by any form of oppression or persecution. That indomitable, strong resolve only appears when we directly encounter hardship. As the saying goes, adversity makes a person wise. In his final years, Dr. Pesci also reached the conclusion that human revolution was vital. He declared, "From now on, everything depends on modern man's behavior and his decisions. It is he himself who, inadvertently or consciously, will shape his individual and collective destiny, and even the destiny of his species." He also said, "I have faith in man. I believe in the human revolution." Continuing on page 75, second column. Bodhisattvas of the earth, distinguished by their thoroughly forged resolve from the Gosho. Among those who propagate this sutra in the latter day of the law, who compares with Shariputra, Mahakashayapa, perceiver of the world's sounds, wonderful sound, Manjushri, the medicine king, and medicine king? Persons of the two vehicles, such as Shariputra, and had destroyed all the illusions of thought and desire, thus freeing themselves from the 6 paths. Bodhisattvas such as perceiver of the world sounds had eradicated 41 of the 42 levels of ignorance and were like the moon on the 14th night before it reaches fullness. Nevertheless, Shakyamuni Buddha refused to entrust the mission of propagation to any of these people and gave it instead to the Bodhisattvas of the earth. Thus, these Bodhisattvas are the ones who had thoroughly forged their resolve. The mighty warrior General Li Kuang, whose mother had been devoured by a tiger, shot an arrow at a stone he believed was the tiger. The arrow penetrated the stone all the way up to its feathers, but once he realized it was only a stone, he was unable to pierce it again. Later he came to be known as General Stone Tiger. This story applies to you. Though enemies lurk in wait for you, your resolute faith in the Lotus Sutra has forestalled great dangers before they could begin. Realizing this, you must strengthen your faith more than ever. It is impossible to say that all I want. It is impossible to say all I want to in one letter. With my deep respect, Nichiren. Second column, page 76. In this passage, Nichiren asks, to whom the propagation of the Lotus Sutra in the latter day of the law has been entrusted. Shariputra and Mahakashyapa are direct disciples of Shakyamuni and representatives of the practitioners of the two vehicles. Perceiver of the world sounds, wonderful sound, Manjushri, and Medicine King are bodhisattvas who assembled for the preaching of the Lotus Sutra. Both the Buddha's disciples and bodhisattvas these bodhisattvas have extremely impressive credentials. Yet, Shakyamuni did not entrust them with the difficult task of propagating the Lotus Sutra in the latter day of the law. Instead, he left it to the bodhisattvas of the earth. Nichiren describes the bodhisattvas of the earth as ones who had thoroughly forged their resolve. As the Lotus Sutra teaches, persecution and difficulties are unavoidable in propagating the sutra in the latter day of the law. Since hatred and jealousy toward this sutra abound, even when the thus come one is in the world, how much more will this be so after his passing? Nichiren repeated this passage often and applied it to his own life. What is the quality needed to be able to carry out this most difficult of undertakings? A thoroughly forged resolve. The root meaning of to forge is to repeatedly heat and fashion metal until it is strengthened. In another letter to Shijo Kingo, illustrating this point, Nichiren writes, untempered iron quickly melts in a blazing fire, but a sword, even when exposed to a great fire, withstands the heat for a while because it has been well forged. And I'm sorry, everybody's had to go to the bathroom here. Sorry. Deep determination can make the impossible possible. I really am almost done. At the end of this letter, Nichiren Daishonin encourages Shijo Kingo, who was a member of the Kamakura warrior class, by sharing an anecdote about how the ancient Chinese general Li Kuang received the name General Stone Tiger. So now that you've returned, what does this deep determination can make the impossible possible? What's that really talking about? Faith. And never give up. Yes. And never give up. And making the impossible actualize itself. Okay? All right, so he's saying General Li Kuang's mother was killed by a tiger. So this is really about determination. Right? This is about your ichinen. All right? General Li Kuang's mother was killed by a tiger. One day, Li Kuang, an excellent archer, sighted a tiger couching in a clump of grass. Believing it to be the tiger that killed his mother and determined to avenge her death, he shot an arrow at it, hitting his target. Assuming he had killed the tiger, he ran up to it to discover that it was a stone in a shape resembling a tiger. Even so, his arrow had penetrated the stone up to the arrow's feather. Although he tried to reproduce his feat, he never could. Through this famous story, Nichiren sought to teach Shijo Kingo the importance of basing himself on strong, indestructible faith, and that such faith is certain to move the heavenly deities to protect him. Though enemies lurk in wait for you, he writes, your resolute faith in the Lotus Sutra has forestalled great dangers before they could begin. Realizing this, you must strengthen your faith more than ever. What has he just said, though? he says, though enemies lurk and wait for you, your resolute faith in the Lotus Sutra has forestalled great dangers before they could begin. What is he saying there? Because it's key to the point that he's making. President Keita has forestalled, put off, not eliminated. Okay? It hasn't changed your karma. It's protected you while you're getting it together to realize how much more deeply you need to improve and increase your faith. Right? A year after receiving this encouragement about make sure your horse is fast enough and all this shit. A year later, a year after receiving this encouragement in October 1279, an attempt was actually made on Kingo's life during an ambush, forcing him to cross swords with hostile samurai. Fortunately, he was successful in repelling his attackers. On receiving a report of his lucky escape, Nichiren praised Kingo's faith, saying, "It is a matter of rejoicing that your usual prudence and courage, as well as your firm faith in the Lotus Sutra, enabled you to survive unharmed." He also wrote these words that are an eternal guideline for all who practice his teaching. Employ the strategy of the Lotus Sutra before any other. That means when you panic, when you feel that fear, when you feel whatever that is, get in front of the Gohonzon and get rid of it. Nichiren's delight and relief at his disciples' safety is evident. Shijo Kingo's victory was actually a victory of faith, of sincerely striving for Kosen Rufu with the same commitment as Nichiren and putting Nichiren's teachings faithfully into practice. It was also a victory of human revolution. How so? Nichiren Daishonin is Nichiren Daishonin. He's a priest, right? We might think Nichiren's somewhat elevated in some fashion. Okay? But what we're talking about here is human revolution of an ordinary person, a goddamn samurai. He had just crossed swords. I just talked a minute ago about him being in a fight. You know, somebody probably got hurt. Okay? So what is he actually saying here? It was also a victory for human revolution. What's his point? What's his point? Come on, guys, because this is all about you too. Is it all about what Shijo Kingo could do back in the 12th century, 1300s? No! Okay, if Shijo Kingo didn't do all that, would we have this to read, though, and to know? Would we have a guide, a guiding light of an example to follow? No. So when anyone does human revolution, what do? They show that it can be done. They prove the validity of the teaching. They allow the baton to be passed forward. This can't just be about shit that happened 700 years ago. Right? It's got to be about how we are able to conduct ourselves in our daily lives now and benefit from it. So he's saying, employ the strategy of the Lotus Sutra before any other. Nichiren's delight and relief at his disciples' safety is evident. Shijo Kingo's victory was actually a victory of faith, of sincerely striving for Kosen Rufu with the same commitment as Nichiren and putting Nichiren's teachings faithfully into practice and then showing the actual proof of what happens when you do that. Okay? It was also a victory of human revolution because that's what he had done. He had been a living example of the power of the teaching. Right? Okay, so a century of the victory of the people in a century of human revolution. On that July 3rd, 1957 meeting, on that July 3rd, 1957, a woman from Tokyo's Bunkyo chapter called out that to me on Haneda Airport while I was walking on board to get my flight to Osaka before he's going to be put in jail for 2 weeks. She asked me for a message to relay to our members. I replied without a moment's hesitation, "Dawn has arrived in Japan. Please convey this message to the members. The undying light of human revolution is forged in the midst of the most trying of times when we engage in the great spiritual struggle to dispel the darkness of fear and confusion with the compassionate sunlight of absolute peace and security. It is forged by keeping the bright flame of hope and courage alive in our hearts, no matter the adversities we face. Everybody's with me on that, right? Okay. So, for 2 weeks from that day, jailed on false charges, I waged an unceasing struggle. Though I was an ordinary young man, I forged my inner strength and fortitude so that my life became as strong as a mighty sword. Summoning up the courage of a lion king, I stood up for what I knew was right. On July 17th, when I was released from jail, we held the Osaka rally at Nakanoshima Civic Hall amid a torrential downpour. All of us gathered there that night, blazed with the determination to ensure that justice would prevail. I am confident that this event marked the dawn of an age when the people, an age when we would vanquish the fundamental darkness at the root of unhappiness and misfortune, defeat all the negative and insidious forces that inflict harm and suffering, and raise our voices in a song of triumph. These efforts represent an unchanging formula. Our valiant efforts as SGI members to make the 21st century a century of the victory of the people and a century of human revolution are now becoming more and more important. In this corrupt and troubled world rife with the three poisons, we must take action with courage, wisdom, and compassion, wielding the mighty sword of faith in the mystic law. Let's press onward with the dauntless confidence and pride of bodhisattvas of the earth, firmly establishing the spirit of human revolution in our lives. And thank you so much for sticking with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.